the Ravenforge rail spike knife, which I think is actually quite a handsome looking knife. It's part of a collection. They do 4 different versions. There's various Tanto things and other things like that, but it is genuinely made from a railway spike. We'll come to that, trust me, we will. It's got the Ravenforge logo stamped into it. Overall, a fairly handsome knife. Slight issue I have with this particular one is that there is that line that you can just see there. It's like a kind of, I don't know if it's a grinding mark, not entirely sure. It's not replicated on that side of the blade, but it's quite a nice blade. It's I think it just looks really good. Overall length of about 11 inches. Blade is about 6 inches. Comes with a nice leather sheath. Although when it's in there, I kind of think it could have done with a bit about that much longer, just to cover that part. You can see the forge scale that's still on the handle. This is actually starting to wear off. These edges were clean when I got it, but this piece, for example, is starting to wear a little bit more the more I've been fiddling and cutting and slicing and dicing. What nicely made overall, and not an easy thing to find in this country. They are much more popular in America, where railroad spikes are actually used. We have a sort of cleat system for holding sleepers into place. The blade, when I first got it, wasn't actually that sharp. It was fairly sharp, but the edge was quite crude. I've run this over my Lansky system, and it's a lot better. But when it comes to blades and edges and edge retention, these aren't really that good. From what I've been able to find out, the American Railway Engineering Association, for there is one, describe these spikes as being either high carbon or low carbon. Neither of these carbons values are anything like what you'd find in a knife blade. They're sort of 0.12 to 0.3%, whereas a knife blade is generally 0.85 to even as much as 1.5% carbon. So the edge retention isn't great on them. Having said that, they're a half cut. So overall, I quite like this. I don't tend to buy knives just on the spur of the moment anymore. I do tend to think about this, and I have my eye on one of these for a while. I'm not massively keen on the blade shape, but if you consider it's probably more of a looker than a user, it's actually not bad. The handle's a hell of a lot more comfortable than you'd imagine it to be, and it warms up quite nicely as well, and you can get quite a decent grip on it. So that's my rail spike knife. Pedantry warning, we're going to look at railway versus railroad, which is correct. So switch off now if you if you don't fancy that bit. So, what is correct? Is it a railway spike knife, or a railroad spike knife? Does anybody really care? Well, I thought it was quite interesting. Railroad is much more sort of the American version, although not Canadian, and railway is much more the sort of British and Empire type version. Before, however, 1850, railroad was used quite widely in Britain, and as we invented the railways, I think we can call it what we like. And after that, for some reason, it just fell into disuse, really. Except in America, so it's a case again of an American word, which sort of linguistic purists and other idiots think, oh, terrible, terrible. Actually, Railroad is probably correct.